Welcome, everybody. Really excited to commence this webinar. We're going to have a very dynamic workshop where we're going to talk about the EB-5 visa program. Specifically, we're here to just offer an educational, informative workshop to empower people to make really good decisions. The world's in flux right now, and we're in interesting times. But I'll tell you, there's two sides to the coin, and we're going to talk a lot about this today. But on one hand, the world's a little bit in chaos. There's a lot of things going on with international affairs. There's very strong opinions on politics, and we see a lot of world instability, but at the same time, we've also seen America be the biggest safe haven for families, business people, more than ever before. And one of the blessings that we have in America is no matter who's president, no matter what's happening international, markets have always been stable here. And we've always had a really good checks and balances, no matter what we hear in the media. So we're not here to real talk about politics. We're not here to talk about all that. What we want to talk about is for people that are interested in coming into the US, right? What are the options? How does it really work? And, our main highlight here is to talk about the EB-5 visa program. And, I'll tell you, as someone who's lived here my whole life and traveled the world and got and learned about businesses internationally, America is a very interesting place. In the US, we have basically 50% of the world's venture capital here. We have one of the highest small business ownership rate. We have one of the best employment rates. And, we hear many things. We hear that, life in America is hard work. But the number one thing that I hear from all families, it's still the land of opportunity. And it's been a very, long journey to help a lot of investors. But thank God, we have the EB-5 visa program, and it's been a game changer for so many family and business people. So that's what we're here to talk about today. And we have this incredible panel that's going to talk about the entire ecosystem, what the EB-5 program is. I'll give a brief introduction myself. I will be your moderator. Name is Matthew Khalili, and what I am is I'm an investment banker, and I basically have been in the investor immigration space for almost the last 15 years. And I've helped form basically put together over $1 billion in capital formation from cross-border transactions. So this is a very personal space for me. My family is basically one of immigrants that came here to start a business and change my life and trajectory. So I like to also help other families come here, start businesses, and be able to achieve the American dream. And we do so via business solutions to come through immigration. So I'm your moderator today. We have an excellent panel of immigration attorneys from project sponsors in the EB-5 program. And I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves. So Abraham, I've known you for many years, and you have one of the most, reputable law firms that I've seen, and I know you help so many families with your team. Can you tell us a little bit about you and your practice? And, we love to hear about your background.
Matthew, absolutely. Thank you for bringing me on, and thank you for putting this panel together to inform the public at large as to this option that is available to them. I'm an immigration attorney. I've been one, since I've graduated law school, I've been an attorney. I did litigation, I've done immigration, and I am one of the founding partners at Cohen Tucker and Adis, a mid-size immigration law firm in New York City that specializes really in all types of immigration, from family-based petitions, whether it's a green card on marriage, or an employment, whether it's a H-1B, or or whether you're an artist or an influencer and looking to get an O visa, and more importantly, is the investor aspect of our law firm, whether you're an investor looking to either go with the EB-5 program, which is something we've been focusing on. The way I'd like to summarize, or at least introduce my firm to people is our firm is old but very young. What do I mean? I mean it is old in name and reputation. It's been around since 1964 in New York City as one of the more premier immigration law firms nationwide. And it is young because the new management that currently runs it, myself and Natalia Morozova, who's on this panel as well, have introduced the latest technologies, the latest research, and integrated it within our law firm to continue providing top unparalleled service to our clients. And especially in this space where people are making substantial investments, they need to feel that they have not just a lawyer, but an entire team behind them through this process. And that I am very proud to say my firm provides, um, or none. Nobody can do it like us, thankfully.
Thank you, Abraham.
Thank you.
Uh, Natalia, I know you got a great introduction from Abraham. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Absolutely. So I'm Abraham's partner. I've been an immigration attorney since I graduated law school. Um, we do a lot of different things here, which actually is one of our big strengths. When we do an EB-5 um, investor visas, which we do a lot of, we kind of look at it as a holistic approach, right? We have a team of people who know everything from crimmigration, which is intersection of immigration and criminal law, to we're able to evaluate people's past immigration history to identify any red flags and how to move forward in a best possible way without jeopardizing anybody's status. But we have been in the EB-5 space for quite some time. The advantage of being in New York City is that we work with people from all walks of life. So whether your EB-5 money are coming from, Eastern Europe or Asia or Africa or Latin America. We've worked with all of that just because, New York City is a melting pot. So we have access to many different variations of money coming from abroad and many different people, some with issues, some with complicated issues. So we're actually in the best possible situation to answer anything that can come up during the process.
Thank you so much, Natalia. And shifting gears, we're also going to make an introduction to Bether Capital. Um, Lily, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and Bether Capital?
Sure. Okay, thank you, Matt. Hi, everyone. My name is Lily Jin. I am the marketing director at Better Capital. So Better Capital was founded in 2003, 23 years ago. We were initially one of the government approved island agents for the PIPNP program. From about 13 or 14 years ago, we shifted our focus to EB-5. We have done over 20 offerings for the past 15 or 14 years, and we have raised over 800 million in EB-5 funds, of which I think we have successfully repaid almost 200 million to the investors. So a little bit about myself. I've been in EB-5 business for 15 years and been with the company for 13 years. And like Matt said, you are one of the immigrants to the US, and I myself will soon to be one of the immigrants to the US because I also did EB-5 project. And so I hope today, this session will be helpful and productive. Yeah, so nice to you
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you, Lily. I just learned last night that Lily is an EB-5 investor in one of Bether Capital's own
Yeah,
projects here in New York City.
right.
So congratulations, Lily.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
TJ, can you give yourself a quick introduction as well? Oh, you're on mute.
Sure. Hi, my name is TJ Kang, everyone. Thanks for being here. I am the legal and finance director at Bethel Capital. I am actually a Canadian, not an American. I immigrated to Canada back in '88. I grew up in Canada. I went to university there. I practiced as a lawyer for over 20 years, working in cross-border M&A and cross-border fund work. I have recently joined Bethel Capital about 4 years ago when the new program opened up again. Our family has been in the immigration business for over 30 years, actually. And so I've always been adjacent to the immigration industry for a long, long time. And now I find myself working in EB-5. My specific role with Bethel Capital is to really identify, negotiate, develop, and structure our EB-5 offerings. That's where my legal background, over 20 years as a partner at McCarthy Tetro in Canada, has become, a key resource for our team. We place a lot of importance on making sure that our deals are structured properly and are commercially viable and legally sound. That's really important for us. And we know, and I'm sure a lot of people who are from North America understand how important legal documentation is for everything. So that's where we place a lot of emphasis. And so hopefully we can share some insights about the EB-5 program, about project selection, whatever else Matthew has up his sleeve.
Thank you, TJ. And with that said, we'll dive in. So, if anyone in this workshop has any questions, there's a Q&A function. So we want to keep this as dynamic as possible. Anything you guys want to know, feel free to put it in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer it. And while that started, Natalia, first thing is, can you just tell us what is the EB-5 program and like what are the main benefits? Why should we care?
Of course, thank you. Great question. So, as you have mentioned before, United States is a land of opportunity, and United States has always been interested in bringing the most successful, the brightest people to benefit the U.S. economy. So this program has been around since the 1990s, and it allows the person who has made money abroad, who wants to come, bring their family, or just come by themselves to the United States to kind of get at this time, quickest access to a green card. So essentially what it boils down to is you bring your money into the United States, and you can invest in a project or invest into your own business. The benefit to the United States is that the project has to create 10 jobs, right? So the U.S. economy benefits from the influx of the funds, but also it creates jobs, paying jobs. It creates work for the people here, which creates obviously tax revenue and stuff like that. And if everything is invested correctly, everything is checks out, and most importantly, the 10 jobs are created, the U.S. government issues you a green card, and you come to the United States and become a legal resident with a direct path to become a U.S. citizen if you choose to do so in the future. So that's kind of the overall program. It has been around for many, many years. It has been vetted. Thousands of people have come through the program. So it has a very well-established reputation abroad and in the United States.
Thank you, Natalia. And Lily, TJ, if you can just tell us, right, most people know that they have to invest in projects, but what is a regional center? What is Bethel Capital's role in this ecosystem? How does everyone work together?
Do you want me to take that, Lily?
Yeah, TJ, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
I guess from the EB-5 program perspective, people should really know that there are three, entities in the mix that you should have a good idea about. So in that sense, you're supposed to invest 800,000 into quote unquote a project, and but in fact, you're not really invested into the project directly. You invest into a fund, which is called the NCE, and then that NCE then takes those funds and then makes some type of debt or equity investment into a project entity and called the JCE. And that JCE is the entity that's developing the project. So for instance, whether it's a condo in New York or a hotel in Miami, whatever it may be, that is in the JC entity. And then there's this other entity called a regional center. This is unique, obviously, to EB-5. And the regional center, I sort of view that as the entity that essentially manages the immigration aspect of this investment. And so what would happen is a regional center would sponsor the NC and the project and say, okay, this project is going to be sponsored by us. We will apply to USCIS to get this project approved. We will ensure then that all the criteria and requirements that are necessary for the investor to satisfy all the immigration requirements, that onus is placed on the regional center to make sure all the documentation and all the necessary information is provided to USCIS. Now, I should say that there are three separate entities in the mix. Who controls all these entities is now a separate question. And in the industry itself, there are multiple different models. One where all three of those elements are controlled by one party. There's one where the regional center and the NC is controlled by one party, and the JC, the development entity, is controlled by a third party. There's ones where the regional center is controlled by a completely separate party from the NC and completely separate from the JC. These are very various machinations and permutations of who controls what, and that is specific to each project.
Yeah, no, and that's really interesting. The
Now,
EB-5 space is, it's very interesting because the control could be very flexible. There's no rules on that. And how one invests, meaning it could be equity, it could be a loan, it could be mezzanine. There's no limitation on the capital structure as well. So it's important to understand how you're investing.
Matt, can
Yeah,
I
but I
add
think
something?
Yeah,
go ahead.
I just wanted to add something real quick to it because I just wanted to clarify this one point, and I see that we even got a question on it. I think here is where you see the importance of having a good law firm and having a good, reliable regional center partner for your project, right? Because there are ways of doing EB-5 direct, which nobody does, right? You have to create the 10 jobs. The alternative is going through the regional center, which TJ very clearly stated, right? And that regional center needs to be one that has experience, that has done this before, that knows what they're doing, that that you can trust. And now on the other end of it, which would go really to answer the question that was posed, is where does the money have to come from? Must the money come from abroad or can the money come from the US? The money can be made in the US and can come from the US. That's not a problem. As a matter of fact, right now, the most EB-5 applications are coming from people who are already in the US, either on an H-1B or on a different type of visa in which they want to upgrade their status to a green card, and they're going through it. But the most important thing isn't what country the money's coming from, but how well sourced is that money and how knowledgeable is the law firm that is sourcing the funds, because this is an essential part of EB-5 that many people do gloss over, but it really highlights the importance of having a competent counsel and a regional center that is trustworthy and reliable.
Yeah, perfect. And that kind of leads me to the next question.
I-
So, Natalia, I just want to...
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Louis.
Can I just add one,
Yeah, please.
something quickly? The regional center and the people, the investor often ask, the first question they ask will be, which regional center are you? And they think the regional center is very important. And it's true that the regional center is important. However, it's also, important to know that a regional center is actually just a license that you need to sponsor a project, that you can use the indirect and induced jobs, right? So what's more important is because you are actually subscribed a fund, and the fund is sponsored by the regional center. The more important role would be who the NCE manager is. So the NCE manager sometimes is the regional center, but sometimes, like TJ mentioned, sometimes it's a third party. So yes, the regional center is important, but the more important is who the NCE manager is, who is managing the funds. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So
So
like,
the Better Capital is actually, the Better
Agreed.
is the NCE manager here.
yeah,
Agreed.
yeah.
Agreed.
So the way to think about it, right? So the attorney does the critical application paperwork, right? Source of funds. You're not getting a green card unless you can document where your money came from. I
Sorry,
think
my internet is not good. I think I'm getting cut off.
it's okay, Lily. So that
Yeah,
that
okay.
$800,000 needs to be sourced, right? That needs to be put in a project, but you can't just put it directly into a project, right? There needs to be a regional center that sponsors a, a territory. It's a license to do EB-5 in a territory, right? And there needs to be a fund manager, which is what Bether Capital is. So that's like your Wells Fargo, your JP Morgan, right? There. So as an
Right.
investor, you're loaning your money to the institution, and then the institution is generally loaning that money out to the project and safeguarding that project and overseeing that. So, in my practice, I prefer that all these entities are different, so there's no conflict of interest. So, think about if you're going to be loaning money to a project and you're your own bank, you know, would the developer want to foreclose on themselves if something like that comes up? So it's very important to understand the ecosystem and everything. Um, Now, Natalia, kind of back to what we were talking about with the attendee who asked about, if funds can come from abroad and in the US.
Yes.
Why don't you just tell us exactly what are the main differences between someone who's actually applying for EB-5 abroad, using money abroad, versus someone in the US and applying? Like, what are the material differences in that process? I think the major question is as well as timeline.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so we're looking at two different processes that have two different timelines. As Abraham mentioned, a lot of the people who are currently in the United States who are either on F1 student visas or H-1B visas, which is a work visa that has a cap to it, meaning you can only be on it for a certain amount of years. They're looking at options to legalize here. So if you're in the United States, and this is the advantage of this time right now, this doesn't happen often. All of the EB-5 bulletin board numbers are current, meaning if you're investing in a rural project, in a high unemployment project, in the infrastructure project, it doesn't really matter where you are from in the world. If you're in the United States, you can apply simultaneously as a petition for the EB-5 and the green card together. When it comes to processing abroad, the process gets divided into two stages. First, you're going to have to submit the documents of the investment and that the project is qualified. And then upon approval, your case would be sent over to a U.S. embassy abroad, where you go already as an individual with an approved petition, and you then have to qualify as an individual for that visa, immigrant visa, that green card. What do I mean by that? When you go to the embassy, right, you have to submit things like medical, because the United States wants to make sure you're not, jeopardizing the health of the United States population. But they also going to look at your specific backgrounds, like right now, social media, AI processing of your background, your criminal history, your previous immigration history, all of that comes into play, right? So that would be the second step of the process, and you have to attend an interview at a U.S. embassy abroad. If you're doing the process here in the United States, the US government does all of that essentially in one step. You put everything together in one step, file it at the same time. The US government will still check your medical history, will check your background, will check your social media. However, if you're in the United States, at least at this time, you're not going to be attending an interview. You're just going to be validated on papers, on your biometrics, on your submissions. So that's the major process. In terms of processing time, right now in the United States, if you invest in a rural project, it is the fastest processing time, right? We're seeing anywhere from 6 to 12 months, and we see some petitions go even faster. The important thing to know is that processing times are subject to change, and they sometimes change monthly, sometimes weekly. It really depends on how many people are being processed and so on and so forth. By definition, if you're processing abroad, your timeline is going to be longer because you're looking at an application here in the US. So let's say you invested in the rural project. That's going to take 3 to 6 months to get approved. Then your case has to get transferred to the embassy abroad, where you're going to have to submit another packet of documents. Then it's going to get reviewed. Then it's going to get released to the actual embassy for the interview to be scheduled. So by definition, that's going to take longer because you're dealing with more than one immigration entity. That processing time, 1.5 to 2 years. Depending on the embassy. Some embassies are much faster in processing things. Some embassies are much slower. That's just how it is. There's a human factor involved in it as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Now we got the biggest question that's next already, so I guess we'll unravel. But we got a question on what's happening during the sunset of the EB-5 program. Specifically, we have a grandfathering clause that is set to expire this September 30th. And one of the attendees wants to know if the fee is going to increase in December. So this is going to take a little bit of thought leadership, right? There's a lot of different opinions, and honestly, I wouldn't know anyone better to ask than Abraham. So
Yeah.
I know you have a lot of opinions on this.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a sunset. I know a lot of people are actively pushing and trying to reauthorize the EB-5 program, but it could expire. The regional center aspect of it could expire by September in 2026, as you stated previously, and as this person put. Now, if your application and your app was put in before September of this expiration date, you're going to be good. Now, I think the second part of the question, which is the increase amount for December, I think that's just baked into the statute, right? The statute, the EB-5, every 5 years, the investment amount has to be reevaluated and increased based on inflation. So by January 1st, 2027, even if the statute is reauthorized and they're going to take a look back to rebase it on inflation, the costs are projected to go up for standard direct investment or standard EB-5, not a TES. It's going to go from 1 million to about 1.2, 1.25 million. Those are the rumors. And for the TEAs, they're going to go from 800,000 to about 900 to 930,000. Those are the other estimates. But these are estimates, and the price will increase based on a standard inflation calculation at that point. But the more important thing that we need to focus on is the September sunset clause, because if the September sunset clause comes, then the other aspect about increasing investment into a regional center isn't really going to make a difference, right? It would only affect the direct EB-5 investments, which wouldn't necessarily be affected by the sunset clause. But yes, it is a very real deadline, as I'd like to, see it, unless we get some change.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to add on the fees as well. So, like, the important thing is right now we have a trifecta effect of everything is current, right, as of May, because the bulletin comes out in the middle of the month every month. So right now, the fastest one is for rural investment, but essentially everything across the border is current. Number two, the driving factor why we're seeing a lot of EB-5 applications right now is the sunset, which is the September 30th, 2026. If you file by then, and even if reauthorization doesn't happen, your visa will still be processed. Like, they cannot terminate it, right? But the third thing that is not such a big factor, but for some people it is. There was an increase in filing fees back in 2024, and there is right now federal litigation that halted the increase. So if you're filing now, you're taking advantage of it being grandfathered. You're taking advantage of the fact that it's one of the fastest processing times we've seen, and you're paying substantially less in filing fees. So, for example, for the petition, you're paying $7,000 less in filing fees because the litigation right now is still in place. So those are the three factors important to keep in mind right now.
Yeah, no, perfect. And just to throw in another opinion, and just to make this clear, this is my opinion only, but EB-5 has been around since 1990. So while since September is a real deadline, I mean, the price is going to go up according to inflation. That's literally in the bylaws. But I do think that EB-5 will be extended long term. And if you want to think about it, we have projects like this Bether Capital's project in New York City, so blue states are benefiting. Natalia said that there's rural projects that have priority processing, so red states are benefiting. We have all these amazing infrastructure projects, like where I'm from. There's like a Port of Los Angeles. There's all sorts of government-backed projects. So it's really benefiting everyone. And EB-5 has just become a little too high profile for it not to want to not to extend. Now there is this gold card that supposedly is competing with EB-5, right? And we get this all the time. So Natalia, should investors use the gold card program in your opinion? And you can tell us what
Uh,
the differences are.
okay, I will give you my personal opinion. So here's the difference. With an EB-5 project, first, it's congressional, right? So there's allocated amount of visas that is dedicated to the EB-5 program. That's number one. Two, you are getting a green card at the end of the process with a path to citizenship. Three, even though by statute it is required that your money is supposed to be at risk, it's supposed to be an investment, right? So if you're investing in a good reputable project, good regional center with a track record, we really have not seen people not get their money back in a very long time. Like absent 10 years ago, there was some activities going on and stuff. Right now, really throughout the industry has been really, really good, right? There's been very good reputable projects that people invest in. So that's and EB-5, like I said in the beginning, the program has been around since the 90s. So it has a very long reputation. It had the time to work out a lot of kinks to create a big infrastructure about it. There's a lot of litigation about it. You know what to do if this happens and that happens. The biggest difference with the Trump Gold Card is that one, the money you're giving for that is a gift. That's it. You gave it, what it's gone. You're not getting anything back. It's not at risk. It's you gave it. Number two, which is the biggest thing among the immigration attorneys, chatter, is that the way that they went around it is there is a program called EB-1 for extraordinary ability green card, and it also has a dedicated amount of green cards that are given under the program a year. So what they did is they went and they took without congressional approval some of the numbers from that program and moved it over to the Trump Gold Card. So what we're expecting is a lot of litigation over that. So we are expecting the minute this starts going actually through, there's going to be a lot of uncertainty and a lot of litigation around taking numbers from one program and giving it to the other. One program being congressionally approved, the other one not being congressionally approved. There's going to be a lot of uncertainty about it. Meanwhile, your money is already there and you're not seeing it back. So a lot of the times, people, especially people who have this amount of money to invest, do like a lot of certainty. When you invest in the EB-5 project, you get to talk to a lot of people. You get to talk to immigration attorney about your source of funds, about your immigration history. You get to talk to the project. You get to look at actual numbers. You get to look at their prior history, what they've done on all other projects. Whereas opposed to Trump Gold Card, there is no history and there's a very uncertain future. So everybody can draw their own conclusion, kind of that.
Yeah, I would even go as far as saying there is no gold card. It's marketing. It's beautiful marketing. It doesn't exist. As Natalia correctly stated, they're trying to go off of EB-1, EB-1A, and the reality is you still have to meet the requirements of those specific visas. They're just trying to bypass it with this specific dollar amount. But it's still an EB-1A, green card, right? It's not a gold card. You need congressional approval for that. So the best I can say is it doesn't really exist. And if you want to invest in marketing, you can, but EB-5 has been true, tried, and tested. And so I would always recommend my clients to move away from the hype and back into reality a little bit.
Yeah. So bottom line, buyer beware with the gold card.
Yeah.
All right. TJ, let me ask you, like, EB-5 is so creative, right? We can invest in different structures, but tell me tell me what those structures look like in your projects right now. Where do people fit on the capital stack? And if you can tell me, like, what are the common things investors like to look for in a good project?
Sure. I think you'll hear commonly people say this is a loan deal or this is an equity deal. You don't hear that much equity deals being done anymore. But what I think we should make sure everyone understands that the EB-5 investment itself is always an equity investment into a fund. The very premise of EP5 is that you cannot be guaranteed the return of your money. Otherwise, it doesn't qualify under the program. So when we start talking about capital stacks and money being lent, all this stuff, it's really at one level below, which is once the fund, the NC collects the money from the various EP5 investors, and pulls that money, it makes an investment into a qualifying project. And that could be either in the form of equity, preferred equity, if you ever see one of those anymore. But mostly nowadays you see loan structures where they make a loan to a project. And then the question becomes, okay, um, well, where does this loan sit on the totem pole of priority of repayment from the borrower? And you can have deals where the E5 loan itself is the senior loan. And so if the first to be repaid, you'll typically get a mortgage or a first deed of trust on the real estate that the site of the project. Or you can see ones where the EB5 loan is a mezzanine loan. So meaning it's the second loan or third loan in a deal, where you might have a senior lender or a senior construction lender that's lending the lion's share of the funds. And then you might have an EB-5 piece that sits on top of that, and typically the second to be repaid. So those are the typical structures you would see. So nowadays, I don't think you see many equity deals. I think I would say predominantly you see loan deals. You see a lot more senior loan deals nowadays than you used to in the past. And so I think in the past it was almost exclusively mezzanine loans. Now you're seeing a lot more senior, which I think is, from an investor perspective, probably one would think that's safer because you are the first lender and the first to the assets. And I think as a general rule, that's correct. But being a senior loan also comes with its own baggage of having to make sure you've raised enough money that you can stay as a senior lender, that your ability to raise, if that's hampered, doesn't impact the viability of the project itself. So these are all the factors that go into from when we start looking at projects as to where we think we want the money to be, where we how much money we think we can be behind if we're going to be a mezzanine loan, how much money we think can be ahead of us before we're comfortable that we are that our EB-5 loan is safe. And so then in that sort of thing that you look at what is the capital stack. So the one thing that most people start looking at is what is the capital stack for the project, and what you will see is very typically a pie chart with essentially three components. One would be the equity of the sponsor, how much equity they're putting in. One would be the senior loan, whether it be EB-5 or a senior, a third party lender, whether they're in the senior position. And then typically there's also quite often a second lender, whether that be EB-5 or some other lender or some other government program that can actually give money to the project. And so that is what you'll typically see in the pie chart. And for us, and for E5 deals, generally, we we don't say, oh, we only do senior deals or we only do best deals. It's really project specific. We analyze the overall capital stack and say, listen, in this type of project, where does it make sense for us to be? Where is the in the capital stack? It doesn't make sense for the E5 loan to be where we believe it's the safest position for the EB-5, and not always senior. Um, and quite frankly, quite often it can be mezzanine and still be very comfortable that your EB-5 money is safe. And that typically is a scenario where you know there's a lot of equity behind your EB-5 money. So, for instance, on our Chelsea project, we have close to 40% of equity, real equity, cash equity from the developer that's sitting behind both the EB-5 loan and the senior loan. And in that circumstance, you might get comfortable with being a mezzanine lender because you know there's lots of money behind you. And so that's in a short summary of how these projects are structured and what they look like.
Yeah, no, thank you, TJ. And personally, I've always found it misleading if a project says, "Oh, senior is the best position." You know, at the end of the day, right, the project has to have its own merits, right? And I've seen plenty of projects that are mezzanine that are far superior to an EB-5 senior loan. And of course, they're great senior loan projects also. So, you know, it's important to evaluate like the structure, right? Like in TJ, was TJ saying, good skin in the game, developer equity, right? Traction of the project, fundamentals of the project, good safeguards. These things all matter. So it's very important when investors are researching, they should know how to do due diligence, right? Just something being a senior loan in itself doesn't make it a good project.
And I'll add one other thing, one of the which is I basically what I commented on that was purely sort of from an investment safety investment perspective. You do have to layer because it's EB-5, you do have to layer this other element, which is the fact that in order well ultimately for you to get an unconditional visa at the end of the piece, you need to show that your project created 10 jobs per EB-5 investor. And that is critical to ultimately getting your unconditional visa. And so you have to pick projects that you are comfortable will create enough jobs. And sometimes there's actually a tension between investment safety and immigration safety. Because I always say to people who say, well, this project has already created all these jobs because people have already built the thing and have spent all the money. And then you always went, well, if that's the case, why are they looking for EB-5 money? Like you always have to question these things and say, well, if you created a project, built it a year ago, and you create all these jobs, then why is the developer looking for EB-5 money? And so that to me, so there's always a tension. So you might have certainty that the job is being created, but then you might have some questions about, well, why is there a need for more cash? Why is there a need for new EB-5 money to in this project? And so these are all these factors go into, and this is where Matthew, you come in and advise clients, I know, well on all these little things, nuances about projects that not is not just an investment product, but it's also an immigration product. So those two things go hand in hand.
Yeah, no, thank you. And TJ, you brought up something very important. So not many people know this, but in the EB-5 space, right, because there's these people in the ecosystem, like Bether Capital, what they really do is they find great projects to sponsor, to want to give a loan to. And sometimes a great project is a project that doesn't need EB-5 money, right? And what they do is they tell the developer, hey, we're paying 12%, 15% cost of capital. What if I can get this to you for 2, 3% below market? Would you like that? They'd be like, sure, I like to save money. So EB-5 actually increases profitability and it becomes a win-win solution, right? Investors aren't trying to get returns. We're trying to get capital preservation, right? For the most part. And, you know, they want their green card, they want jobs created. And because of this dynamic in the ecosystem, like TJ, like projects can be sponsored in the middle of construction, right? We don't need to take the execution risk, right? And you said some projects are nearly complete, right? So that can add a little layer of safety as well. And that is also beneficial for job creation because, you know, sometimes you can be in a position where jobs are already created, construction has already started, and I would say the perfect storm is if you can bring the cost of capital lower with money they don't even need.
Yes, exactly. I think for investors that are out there, I think if you looked at the projects or investors who have failed the immigration process, not because of their own personal reasons on their application, but to do with the investment choice they made. I think many of them, I bet you, start with the premise that the project has not started yet when they invested, and the project never gets off the ground. That is probably, majority of the scenarios where um, the investment has failed, the process has failed for investors. And so, uh, certainly for people looking at deals, one of the key items to look for is to satisfy yourself that this project will start, has all the necessary permits and things of that nature that allow them to start, that the capital is in place to start, and then even if it hasn't started, that you know that they're capable and able to do so. And so that is really one check the box thing that's a must that each investor should satisfy themselves on.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. Like the most important thing is, a lot of projects fail because they don't get started, they get delayed. So it's really cool that we can be any part of this life cycle. Okay, we have a burning question here for Natalia. And I'm just going to layer multiple questions that I see. But bottom line is we have someone in the audience that, wants to know what are the common reasons why EB-5 cases are rejected. And I'll just, there's a second follow-up question after that that I'll ask you once we hear your response.
Sure. So do you want me to take the first one? Natalia takes the second one? That's fine.
Go for it. You guys are the
Sure.
same team.
The common, I can give you the common denials. The first and most common denial in EB-5 cases is source of funds. The funds, there was no source of funds. It wasn't done properly. They can't be traced correctly. That's the most common denial. Then the other ones, I think TJ touched on a few, right? One major one is the funds are not actually at risk. These are like protected by side deals, or there's a guarantee in the disclosure agreement that you're going to get your money back, or that you're going to guarantee you a green card. Any type of guarantee in any type of agreement should immediately raise a red flag, because it would take you out of at risk, which is a mandatory requirement for the EB-5 program. The job creations are not credible. Personally, in my firm, when we're looking at different, we don't recommend projects because we're not licensed. But one thing we do like to see, just from a personal, non-financial recommendation portion, is that it's more than exactly 10 jobs, right? If you're looking at at the plan and says this project will create it, because all the regional centers, if you're investing in that, it's not a direct jobs, it's indirect. We can further explore that, but basically, um, a lot of projects will give you an estimate of how many jobs your investment's going to create, how many jobs this project going to create, divided, and get a per investor number. That number for me should always be above 10. If you see it's going to create exactly 10 jobs, understand it's probably a red flag, and there could be issues that arise later that will wreck your application. The minimum ones are just the minimum investments are not met. There's a loan agreement that doesn't follow through, false information on documents, and the regional center, as TJ said, fails, or just completely terminates in middle, misuses funds, doesn't execute, or there's an improper investment structure where you're investing directly with the developer instead of going to the NCE that goes to the JCE. So these are all the reasons that denials happen, but the most common one will always be, for us at least, the ones we see. Thankfully, we don't get them, but it's a source of funds issues, and it's usually because of sloppy attorney work.
Okay, thank you, Abraham. Natalia, so we have someone that wants to know, right? They're in the US. They heard you talk about how long it could take applying abroad. I think you mentioned anywhere from 6 to 24 months, given the type of embassy that maybe they're applying from. But if someone is in the US and they invest in a TEA project, right, what are the different timelines? So maybe you can tell us timelines for rural and HUA. And maybe this is also a good time to talk about 485 and advanced parole as well, and concurrent filing. And Natalia, I think you're on mute.
Okay, so two different things here. So the fastest right now is rural. We're seeing about 8 months. right? Fluctuating. There's ones that are below, there's ones that are above. This is a good number to give. In high unemployment infrastructure, it is about 8 to 12 months if you inside the United States. Okay, so it's pretty fast for United States immigration. For everybody else, it might not be fast, but for us, these are great numbers. We get excited. The second question about the advanced parole, that really depends on what your status currently is in the United States. Because I'll explain to you, I'll give you an example. Let's say you're a student here in the US. We always advise the investor to keep the underlying status, which is your primary status, your student visa status, while you're going through the process until you're holding your green card in your hand. If you have an underlying status, we ask you to maintain it. So if you're a student, to continue going to school. If you're here on H-1B, to continue working for your employer. If you're here on an E-2 visa, to continue managing your own business, whatever that case is. What that does is restrict people's, in most cases, with very limited exceptions, restricts a person's ability to take advantage of advanced parole. Because while the green card, the 485, is pending, you cannot take advantage of traveling outside the United States on advanced parole without losing your status here in the US. So if I'm a student with a pending EB-5 green card and I take the advanced parole and I leave, of course, I will come back, but when I come back, I am no longer a student, and therefore I have lost that underlying status, which is my plan B, which is my safety net for if anything goes wrong with my EB-5 project or my application, I can always still have and maintain that status. So that question is, it depends on your situation and your needs.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. And not to complicate it, right? But they say there could be a potential invisible backlog as well from some countries as well. So, those months are contingent if, retrogression does not happen. Do you want to maybe touch on that as well, Natalia?
So the magic word is the magic phrase is the visa bulletin board, which is what we live and die by in the immigration world. Every month, in the middle of the month, a board comes up that all of the visas that have a numerical value to it, both in employment space and family space, the government comes up and tells you where your priority is, meaning where you are in line in waiting for your next step. As of May, I just checked this morning for EB-5, everything is current. However, obviously there is no certainty. That means that if you file your concurrent EB-5 by the end of May, you will still take advantage of that visa. If you're going into June 1st, and we're going to know by the middle of May what June numbers bring to it, if you go one day over, we don't know what it's going to be. But if you file within the month of May and June numbers come out and they're 2 years retrogressed, that doesn't affect you. You have locked in your space in the processing time. Basically, this is what it comes with. So every month it's like a waiting game. Like there are people who are unsure, should they take advantage of it? They want to think, they want to have another consultation, but time runs against them because once the next month bulletin board comes up, it's a running game. You need to make sure everything is ready. Source of funds being the biggest issue always in EB-5 filing, and the amount of documents that have to be reviewed, prepared, and stuff. So giving yourself 2 weeks to file an EB-5 in order to take advantage of this month bulletin board is not a good strategy for anybody.
Yeah, definitely. And it practically
Matt,
speaking, this is only going to affect people from mainland China and India if they're worried about a potential retrogression at this point, I'd imagine. Um,
yeah, Matt,
Go ahead, Lily.
sorry if I could just add, one more thing actually on the first question, the EB-5 denial question. As
Sure.
Abraham has mentioned, there are various reasons that you get denied, but mainly it's on like two aspects. One is the investor source of fund, and then the other one is on the project, right? So you can, as post IRA, USCIS requires every project to file I-956F. So if a project already got F approved, which basically means there's no risk that you get denied because of the project. So as long as your source of fund is good, and you can basically you can say you can get approved, and the source of fund that you are with this amazing, Abraham, Natalia are amazing lawyers. I'm sure your file will be in good hand. You don't have any issues with the source funds. So basically today you have an F approved project and you have this amazing lawyers to help your source of funds. I think you don't need to worry about the denial of your petition.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you, Lily. Lily, just something to ask you. Let's say someone invests in your project. What is the communication like at that point once people are invested, what get the money back? What can people expect in regards to updates and communication on how the project is progressing?
Yeah, sure. As you know, yeah, the post-RI USCIS requires all the project to either engage with a third-party fund administrator or you do, audition, annual audition. So in the case of our project, every of our project will have a third-party fund administrator. So working with Proxy International. So if once you invest, your money is released from escrow, you'll get notified from Proxy, with a access to your personal port, so you can log on into the portal and you can get project updates. You can actually check anytime you want. You'll get update on the construction, on the how the money is used, how many jobs are created, also the soft cost, the hard cost. That you can get everything through that portal.
Thank you, Lily. And
Yeah.
we're almost out of time, but we have one more question, and I think this is a very commonly asked one. Natalia, Abraham, we have clients all the time asking if they can use loans, they can use gifts, what type of loans they can use. Can you kind of touch on, like, from a source of funds perspective, what is allowed and what's not allowed? And I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I'll touch on that a little bit. So we've done a lot of EB-5s where the source of fund is a gift, most often from a family member. So that's allowed. Loans are very tricky. The government likes to see it collateralized, so they want to see that the money is at risk, right? So if, for example, if I am the sole proprietor and I'm taking the loan from the company, they don't really like that because there's a high risk that I'm just not going to repay that loan back. So the money is not as at risk as they would like it to be. But yes, you can take a loan from a company. We've seen people take a loan against their stocks in the company where they work. Like if you're senior level as a CFO or CEO, we've seen it structured of many different ways, and we've done it a gift and a loan together. So the general answer, yes, you can, but of course the devil is in the details.
Can I add just one thing to that as well? With regards to both gifts, especially with gifts, because that does happen more often, and people think that just because it's a gift, they're gonna just be able to trace the person who gave them the gift, and that's it. The source of fund is finished, right? That's it. That's not the way, right? The funds that you received as a gift need their own tracing as well, because those monies need to be sourced and legitimate money. The same for the EB-5 loan. The entire idea is yes, you can take a loan, but your money needs to be at risk, meaning you cannot put your position in the EB-5 program as collateral for the loan that you're receiving, nor can you just sign a personal guarantee. There needs to be something collateralized that's at risk, as my partner stated before on that. But all the funds must be lawfully sourced, regardless where they're coming from, whether gift, loan, or you made your own money. And that's the most important aspect of it.
Maybe
Perfect.
I'll add one thing, which is I know in the market there's offerings out there that are saying that they will loan you money to fund part of your EB-5 investment into a particular project. I think if anybody is interested and hear about those projects and are interested in that type of arrangement, they need to talk to their immigration lawyer, like Abraham and Natalia, right away. There's certainly been cases where people have been denied on the basis that that type of loan does not work. They're all different, all structured slightly differently, and so it's not to say that all of them don't work, but many of them have not worked, is the way I understand it. And so you have to be very careful. So if people see that in the marketplace, there's certainly something that they should talk to their
Yes,
immigration lawyer
you're
about.
absolutely correct. At the end of 2025, there was a wave of denials specifically for that reason. Yes, that did happen. So, like I said, the devil is in the details. There's a lot of different structures for source of funds. There's many opportunities to stack things on top of each other, but you just have to be very, very careful and meticulous about that.
Perfect.
Matt, I want to add something that I know a lot of people usually ask, and we didn't really touch on it too much, but I think it's important to just throw out there. And I usually get this question: is the investment, 800,000 per person in my family, or is it one investment that covers my entire family, right? It is not a per person investment. You can bring your family on that investment. Obviously, there's a limit to amount of kids and all of that, but it is usually sufficient as one investment for the entire family. I know it's a very common question, so I just wanted to throw that out there, anticipating it ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's really exciting. All children under 21, spouse, it's all included, as opposed to the gold card, that is an individual basis, and they want a processing fee. So it's pretty exciting. Um,
Yeah.
so just before we wrap up, TJ, Lily, I know you guys have an exciting project that you're about to close on. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about what your project is right now, if so the audience can know, and how everyone can get in touch.
Sure. So we have this amazing project located in Manhattan, New York, where Natalia and Abraham is. This is a luxury condo project. It's 22 stories, 83 units, and the construction already started last year. I think it's 15 or 16th floor now. We actually already have created enough jobs for. We're looking for 63 investors. The EB-5 money is only 15% of the total stack. So construction is going on well. All jobs are created for all the investors. And the developer is expecting to start sales in June. And you know, because there is a high equity percentage in the project, the loan to cost is very, very low. The loan to value is also very low. We anticipate that the loan will be repaid with only like 40% of the sales of the condos. So it's a very, very sound project with F approved, jobs created, with the sunset coming close. I think there would be a good choice if you're considering EB-5 investment. So if you're interested in the project, you can, Matt or TJ or myself are ready to here to be connected. You can feel free to reach out. We can provide you more information on the project.
Thank you. And Natalia, Abraham, how do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can reach out by phone at 212-840-0050 or email either me or Natalia. Both of our emails are very, very simple. Mine is abraham@cohentuckerlaw.com. Natalia's is natalia@cohentuckerlaw.com. And, we anticipate we'll more than willing to answer any questions, meet with you, and really walk you through the entire process. But those are the ways you can get in touch with us. Now,
Thank you.
Matt, how do people get in touch with you?
Well,
Nobody's
first,
asking you that question, so now I'm going to ask it.
well, first they should get in touch with their immigration attorney, make sure they're qualified, and then I'm more than happy to speak. But before we talk about me, do you guys offer free consultations?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. Well, yeah, very happy. My email is matt@newworldventures.us. Of course, I'm happy to speak with anyone on a consultation for due diligence. But I hope everyone has learned a lot. If anyone is interested in EB-5, wants to learn more, definitely invite anyone to speak directly with the panelist. We're here to help. There's a September 30th deadline. It's not the end all be all, but definitely if you want to save money and, secure a spot without having to deal with new regulation, this is the time. So
Absolutely.
thank you everyone for attending, and I look forward to being in touch.